Hello and welcome to the Excluto podcast. We're pleased to welcome you today to our conversation about startups, venture capital, and the world of innovation. I'm Vijay Rajendran, your guest host today, to welcome you to this conversation, which is for educational and informational purposes and not financial or investment advice. I'm pleased to welcome today to the podcast Apurva Chamaria, who joins us today from the company that needs no introduction, from Google, where he is the head of startups and venture capital at Google India. Somebody who has a lot of background in the world of startups, investment, venture capital, and as an operator in the tech space, and who I'm pleased to welcome today to share with us his insights from the fast growing and constantly changing world of startups and certainly world of tech. So welcome, Apurva, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Vijay. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Apurva, perhaps you can start by sharing with our audience a little bit about your journey into the startup ecosystem.
So, Vijay, I used to live in US, and this was on the East Coast, and I used to work at a tech company. This was, late 2008, 9, 10. There was a lot of action happening around the venture ecosystem in US. And as we know, venture ecosystem in US is very mature. It's existed for more than 65, 70 years. And the investors there have seen lots of cycles. The founders have also seen a lot of cycles, and you now have many third or fourth time entrepreneurs building very large outcomes there, like Elon Musk. So I used to feel very energized and excited with all the activity I used to see in the venture ecosystem. So when I moved to India in 2011-12, I started seeing opportunities to connect with founders, see if I can help them with my background in global business, international expansion, brand building, marketing, GTM. And uh, there were very few of us in 2012 in India. I think hardly, I would say 10, 15 VC firms who were known, and maybe a handful of angel investors. We really didn't have the depth in venture talent or operator talent in India. And I was fortunate enough to start partnering with some amazing entrepreneurs that time. And that journey has now been close to 13, 14 years. And it's been incredible to see the Indian startup grow to become the third largest ecosystem in the world, with more than 103 unicorns and many successful operators who have gone on to build their third and fourth largest companies. Some of my early investments included Joe Stocks, Inc. 42, which has now become the bellwether for all startup media in India, Innovate, which we exited to Oyo in an all cash deal a month before the WeWork fiasco. So I guess I got lucky there. Checkbook, which was one of the first fintechs in India, Lucidius, which is now called Cybersecurity, where John Chambers invested after I came in. Uh, and pretty much from 2011 to 2017, there were hardly any exits. The Indian market was still coming up. And we used to joke that, it's paid forward, we're investing. But there were no meaningful outcomes till then. And I think all of us were so energized with the level of activity, innovation, grit these founders were showing, that we continued to stay invested. In some cases, we also did follow on rounds. And from 2017, the tide turned. Indian startup ecosystem had become mature, and we started getting exits. And we know the story. Indian startup ecosystem became the third largest. 2020 was a record year where almost 43 billion was invested in Indian startup ecosystem. I also took the time after 2017-18. So I joined a small SaaS startup called RateGain. and then partnered very closely with the founder, investors to grow it into a very large company, which eventually listed in Indian Stock Exchange. So, uh, very proud to be a part of this ecosystem. And because I have both an investor and an operator lens, it's a pleasure to really, really partner with founders.
Thank you. And that's an important perspective. Is there are many financial investors out there, and you have a background as someone who's built companies, and perhaps you can contrast for us, that mindset versus someone who comes in as with more of a purely financial perspective.
Thank you. That's a great question. So, Vijay, what really happens is, I think if you've built companies, whether it's a 0 to 1 journey or 1 to 10 or 10 to 100, uh, you can literally walk in the founder's shoes. You know that when you're building companies, it's always a sinusoidal wave. There are days when you feel on top of the world, and then there are days where you feel like, oh my God, what am I doing? uh, am I on the right track? Why did I get into this? This is incredibly tough. Every day is so it builds a deep sense of empathy, connect with the founders. Secondly, because you have operational experience, you can truly add value. You can stop them from the mistakes you made. You can help them as a sounding board, because you've run companies, you've hired people, you've led GTM motions, you've worked on product development, you've raised money. You can confidently tell them that it's not as bad as it looks and things are going to get better. I think if you've only been an investor and not an operator, a lot of your knowledge is secondary. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think people who have organically grown in an investment role over many years play a very valuable role in the ecosystem, and they form a check and balance system. Often, if you've been an operator, you have a very high degree of empathy, and you could end up overcompensating uh, when you're engaged with founders. You could end up being very soft, and investors at times bring that hard perspective, dispassionate, non-passionate perspective to portfolio management. Uh, so I think a good balance is important. Operator lens with the financial acumen of a professional investor is what really, really takes one far in this field.
That's a good distinction, and thank you for like calling out what's good, what's bad, what's the advantages and pros and cons of different types of players when it comes to investing. I do also want to touch on something you pointed out, which is a lot has changed since 2011. What stands out in your mind as the big changes, the major sort of evolutions in that time that you've witnessed?
So let me start with the demand side, or the buy side. I think in 2010-11 there were hardly 20 funds in India, maybe 4 or 5 family offices, maybe 50 angel investors. Today we have more than 900 registered alternate investment funds in India, uh, more than 2,000 family offices, and possibly 50, 60,000 registered, accredited angel investors. Uh, we've gone from angel investment or VC being an exotic asset class to being a very, very credible source of portfolio diversification in India. We've gone from having 2 or 3 uh, unicorns on the sell side to almost 103 unicorns. We've gone from India having only 300 startups to 103,000 startups, 103,000 startups. We've gone from India not being in the top 50 global startup ecosystems of the world to the third largest. So we've seen exponential growth. When I look back 10, 15 years ago, Indian startup ecosystem was all about picking up models which have worked in Western world and being a fast follower and doing something similar in India. Now, and the sector was largely consumer internet. So you had Flipkart starting, you had Snapdeal starting, you had a lot of early e-commerce companies like Myntra, Yebi, Jabong. It was all about consumer internet.
And that feels like it was just yesterday.
That just feels like it was yesterday. Absolutely. Uh, Stories of Sachin and Binny going around on bikes delivering books in Bangalore, Kodmangla. Um, from being one sector focused to now, actually, we've seen many sectors achieve depth, domain experience, global leadership, SaaS. So Indian SaaS has come of age. More than, I would say, 50, 60 companies, more than 100 million ARR. We've seen listings in SaaS. So ReadGain is a great example. The company I was the chief revenue officer of, Freshworks listed, is doing very well, and many other such success stories. Deep tech has come of age. A lot of work happening around quantum in India, around space tech in India, around energy transition in India, around clean tech in India. Around now, latest is we are seeing early signs of companies coming up in VLSI design, semiconductor design. So from being one sector focused to sectors like gaming, edtech, India possibly has the largest number of large outcomes in edtech globally. Fintech. What has really also helped is government's focus on creating digital public infrastructure and rails on which startups can build disruptive companies and products. Example of digital public infrastructure is Unified Payments Interface (UPI), Open Network for Digital Commerce, OCEN, Open Credit Innovation Network. Many such portions of digital public infrastructure were built by the government, which has accelerated the 0 to 100 journey for startups. Think of it as Germany building autobahns, leading to the creation of great cars, which
Mhm.
today are known around the world for engineering quality.
Right.
India has done something similar with DPI, digital public infrastructure, or public, digital goods, PDGs, which is resulting in iconoclastic Indian tech startups coming out.
That's a great analogy. It's like once the the public sector, which does have a role, sets the contours, sets the framework around which innovation can take place. A lot is possible. That's very different, as and contrary from other places. So contrast that perhaps to the U.S., where you have platforms and payment systems and different like rails that have sprouted up without that sort of level playing field, perhaps, which the government has created with UPI.
I think the good part about our government and the mindset which they have is, so our dear Prime Minister always says, "Sabka saath, sabka vikas," which means we need to take everybody along. We need to make sure everybody is progressing. We can't leave anybody behind and create a future society with a deeper divide of haves and have nots. And that's such an integral part of values in the startup ecosystem in India, where founders actually want to build for everyone, be very inclusive. And that's something which we at Google also connect very deeply with. And we partner with a lot of founders. And India is a great counterbalance to a traditional narrative of a few cornering large market shares, large profit pools, and the Indian government and Indian ecosystem is weighing a way, showing a way of creating outcomes where more and more people are in the fold rather than outside the tent.
So as you can build and innovate inclusively, that must create more rather than fewer opportunities at organization like Google.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, we have a role in the ecosystem, the government has a role, uh, the accelerators and incubators have a role, the VC funds have a role, the corporate venture capital arms have a role, uh, cross border partners have a role. Uh, it takes a village to raise a child, and startup is something similar. Uh, I think what Indian founders today are enjoying is the hard work and sweat put in by many founders who came before them. Uh, you had Make My Trip starting, you had Book My Show starting, you had Flipkart starting, and all these companies have been inspirational in the way founders today think about their journeys.
That's that's true. And also, today's investors are benefiting from work that was done before by different angel groups, different early investors, early VCs. Um, for the high net worth individuals, for the families that are now, as you pointed out, joining these ranks of potential uh, investors in innovation, in venture and startups, what do they have to look forward to? What can they start to think about?
Excellent question. Um, so I think the UHNI or HNI definition differs by uh, various regions in the world. In India, there is a regulatory aspect to the definition which we should keep in mind. Um, but the way I think about it is the Indian startup ecosystem has been experiencing a remarkable evolution over the past decade, which has been characterized by rapid growth, innovation, and increasingly vibrant set of HNIs who are playing in the ecosystem. If you look at this whole space, this presents significant opportunities for UHNIs and HNIs to actively participate and benefit. First, look at the sheer scale of the market. With a population of above 1.3 billion and a growing affluent middle class, there is a burgeoning demand for innovative products and services. So currently, our per capita income is about $2,300, and by 2030, it's expected to cross $5,000. The moment it crosses $2,500, uh, there is enough research which shows that people move from largely a saving mindset to a consumption mindset, and a lot of disposable expenses start kicking in, and which further creates opportunities for startups. HNIs can really participate in this growth journey by investing in startups which are catering to diverse consumer needs and preferences. Secondly, there is a emergence of technology as a key enabler, democratizing startups, making it more accessible to aspiring founders from diverse backgrounds to build. We are seeing internet, rapid availability, cloud computing, AI, blockchain, um, and startup founders from even smaller towns in India. The traditional narrative was always about IIT, IIM, big cities, Bangalore, Gurgaon. Now you actually see founders coming in from Patna, from Jabalpur, from Coimbatore, uh, these amazing towns. And you have HNIs who are there in these towns also. They don't need to really be familiar with the Delhi ecosystem or Bangalore ecosystem. They can actually participate and partner with founders from their cities and towns and help them realize their true potential, in a way giving back. Initially, all the giving back in India was about roti kapda makan. So HNI who wanted to give back would create a dharmshala where people, weary travelers, could stay in the night. They would create a temple where you could find spiritual enlightenment. They would sponsor some books, maybe scholarships in colleges and educations. And while these things are still important and HNIs do it, the other part of giving back, which is now widely recognized, regarded, and appreciated in India, is giving back by partnering with founders, by investing in them, by supporting them. Uh, I think Startup India's policies, so Startup India as a government body, has also created a very nice regulatory framework which fosters a conducive environment for startups and HNIs to partner. They've simplified the regulatory framework, provided tax incentives, and easier access to funding. Uh, and HNIs can capitalize on this to invest. HNIs can also tap into the ecosystem by partnering with startups across the rounds. So you can do a early stage investment, you can do follow-ons, you can actually participate in pre-IPO journeys, and we've seen a flurry of startup IPOs happen. So the traditional narrative around you will only get an exit if a large follow-on round happens is something which in India is now getting busted as a myth. We've seen companies which are only doing 40 crores, 100 crores list on the SME IPO exchange. So every time HNIs get a good outcome and the liquidity in the startup ecosystem increases, you will see more and more new HNIs joining the bandwagon. Traditionally, these HNIs were only family offices, Vijay, but now you have CXOs like yourself and others participating, even if it is 5%, 3% of their annual income. People want to take a position in this category. It makes them feel alive. It makes them feel that they are on a journey of lifelong learning. It gives them vicarious thrills in seeing the founders they are backing shape the ecosystem, solve problems which were known to be very, very tough to solve. So it's not only financial outcomes which is driving HNIs in India to partner with startups, but it's also learning outcomes, it's diversification outcomes. So
That's very exciting, to think about what is evolving from just a form of giving back or supporting your community to really connecting to the future, as you said, feeling alive. That when one wants to play that role, it's very exciting to think about becoming an angel or becoming an LP. Um, those are, like, of course, very different ways to participate. Um, the question is often, do you have the expertise and the network to invest, or do you want to leverage someone else's network and expertise as a participant in the
it's a very, very good point you bring out. I think there are two ways for HNIs to participate in this ecosystem. One is you become an angel investor, and the second is you become a LP in a fund. And I wanted to talk through both the options. I think when you're thinking these things, you have to do a careful consideration of various factors, including what's your financial capacity, risk tolerance limit, investment goals, and expertise which you bring to the market. Let's first talk about becoming an angel investor. If you think about becoming an angel investor, the first thing you should think about is your financial capacity. This is going to require a significant amount of capital. We all know about the power law, and you're going to be individually investing in startups which are going to range from in India as low as maybe 2 3 lakhs to as high as 25 30 lakhs. You should determine whether you have the financial situation and a means to allocate maybe 4 5 10% of your annual income and savings to a portfolio which is high risk but maybe even high reward. What's your risk tolerance? Angel investing startups is one of the riskiest asset classes known, and if you're going to be participating in it, you have to understand that the failure rate is going to be very high. You need to have a very high tolerance for risk and be prepared to potentially lose your entire investment in some cases, even with the best intentions at heart. The third thing you should look at is expertise and network. If you
and
don't,
and to sort of put a fine point on that, what the power law is telling us is that you can only lose one time your money, but you can gain 10, 20, 100 times your money.
absolutely,
And
absolutely, absolutely. But what happens is traditional HNIs are used to fixed income asset class, bank deposit, corporate deposits, where even statutory and from a regulatory framework, the government protects your money. Here, it's known to be a higher asset class. Caveat emptor, when you're getting in, you should be aware that this is a high risk asset class. I think if you want to be an angel investor, you should also think about, do you possess the industry network to successfully source deals? Uh, do you have the expertise to identify promising investment opportunities? And can you add value to these portfolio companies, thereby meaningfully shaping outcomes? Diversification. So I think if you have invested in other asset classes, you can always look at being an angel investor to diversify and drive alpha. And finally, because it is illiquid and a long term uh, investment, your investment horizon for this asset class has to be long term. Your capital is going to be locked in for long. And this is also taxed in India at a higher rate than listed equity. So you have to be comfortable with the higher tax burden. Till now, we've had a higher tax burden on angel investments. Hopefully, that will change sometime later. The beauty of the other option, where you're a LP in a venture capital fund, is you have professional investment managers which take investment decisions. In India, they are all regulated by SEBI, Securities and Exchange Board of India, and you're either a Cat 1 angel fund or a Cat 1 VC fund or a Cat 2 or a Cat 3 fund, and the regulations are pretty stringent. So if you are investing in a investment manager running a fund in India, you can be rest assured that the highest level of scrutiny has been done by the regulator before giving them a license. And then there are a lot of annual filings which they end up doing. They are doing it as a full time job. If you're an angel investor, you have a source of income, or you're retired, you're not doing this full time. Investment fund managers, business is investing. They will have a thesis, they will have a IC investment committee. They are doing this full time. So the level of governance, thinking, programmatic approach to investing is very high. Funds typically will have access to a higher deal flow, because they will have experienced principals, analysts. They will benefit from fund managers, network, expertise, due diligence process, which at times is very, very hard as an individual investor to do. You can't spend 4 weeks diligencing a company from legal DD to financial DD to technical DD, uh, to actually writing an investment memo which shows structured thinking in the way you're taking decisions. Uh, I think investing in venture capital funds also help you diversify across the multiple startups they are going to invest in. It is a more passive approach versus an active approach, which is angel investment, because you will have drawdowns. Typically, you will not have a say in the investment decision. Once you have signed on the PPM, the pre-placement memorandum, you have bought into their thesis and you are trusting them to do the necessary to deliver superior outcomes. Versus you being far more active as an angel investor, most funds will also have a minimum investment requirement. In India, regulator also specifies what is the minimum investment requirement. For an angel fund, it's 25 lakhs uh, over the fund life, and for a VC fund, it's 1 crore, 1 crore. So you should also be able to make that commitment. Ultimately, the decision to become an angel or LP depends on individual preferences, financial situation, risk appetite, and investment objectives. Both these options offer incredible opportunities to participate in the high growth potential of Indian startup ecosystem, along with varying risks. It's very, very important to conduct thorough due diligence and seek professional advice before making investment decisions.
Well said. Absolutely. Getting as much perspective and as much professional advice as possible is important. And certainly, you have to decide: do you want to do this as a hobby, or do you want to entrust things to professional managers? And when you entrust things to professional managers, then you trust them. And as you point out, you are a limited partner, a silent partner of theirs, versus deciding to whether or not to pull the trigger, but maybe without all the adequate and available time that those professional managers have. So thank you for that really articulate illustration of the different ends of the spectrum.
My pleasure, Vijay.
So when you think about the opportunities over the next few years for people who are starting to approach this space, let's say they're in a tier 2 city or tier 3 city. Um, how might they go about navigating their local ecosystem as well as like learning about the broader trends and opportunities?
It's a very good question. I think there are some incredible online platforms in India like Ink42, Your Story, ImTracker. Uh, there are global entrepreneurship organizations like TIE. TIE would have many chapters in India. There is TIE Delhi, TIE Bangalore, TIE Mumbai, TIE Jaipur, TIE Udaipur. Uh, and if you don't have a TIE chapter and you're very passionate about entrepreneurship, you can always reach out to the TIE team, understand what does it take to create a TIE chapter and create a chapter. I think the important thing when you want to connect and participate in your local ecosystem is approach it with the mindset of pay it forward. Uh, Understand, think through what are the key uh, strategies which you want to use to really grow the ecosystem. Over time, all of us gain experience, expertise, networks. Can you bring that to the local ecosystem to play? Whether you do it formally through an organization like TIE or do it informally by connecting with founders, visiting co-working spaces, organizing startup events. Head Start is a great pan-India network which does a lot of work on the grassroots level. Multiple opportunities are there. The government has been promoting incubators and accelerators. So even if you look at the local engineering colleges or management colleges or even schools, it is very likely to have a tinkering lab, a maker's studio, or a venture studio, and that's going to be very exciting. So go there with an open mind, non-judgmental mind. Go there with a desire to support, make things better, enable them, and you will start getting more and more opportunities. You will create goodwill for yourself, and that starts a virtual cycle where you start getting deals. uh, Good deals lead to even better deals, and you end up contributing.
You know, what you said was so rich with many takeaways. What I heard there was you have to see what's happening locally. Um, you have to kind of give first without any expectation of something in return. So you have to participate rather than just take. You have to offer something to the community. And also, there's a lot that you just have to like invest time in to get to know, to learn, to become both proficient and aware of what's like happening in the ecosystem at large.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's a huge mindset shift because traditionally, you're encouraged to think of what's in it for me first. So you when you flip on the switch and you change the narrative and you start thinking about giving back, uh, giving back is what leads to you becoming accepted in the startup ecosystem with open arms.
Mhm. Yeah, that's right. And that's what makes us stronger. It's what makes the ecosystem healthier. It's what certainly uh, advances everyone and can create a tide that lifts all boats. So, I think that's a beautiful kind of thought for us to kind of capstone and end our conversation for this episode. Is what can we all bring to this ecosystem, this community, as well as what we all stand to gain from being investors and participants. So, I want to thank you, Apurva, for sharing these like very rich ideas, as well as for all the things that you and through your work at Google are doing to definitely be, as you said, inclusive and creating a wealth of opportunities.
Thank you so much, Vijay. I really enjoyed the conversation and look forward to being in touch.
Thanks. For people who want to follow you online or things you're doing or things that are important to you, what's the best way for people to learn more?
So my handle, Twitter handle, and we can overlay it when we do the post production on this video, is A1PURVA. So you can follow me on Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and connect. I'm usually very responsive. So look forward to hearing from podcast listeners and connecting.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for your for very giving and contributing mindset. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much.
much. Have a
Thank you.
great day.
You too.